Everybody in the virtual world is connected with us right now?
They are.
Wonderful. Well, we want to welcome you to our afternoon programming here at the 2021 Banjo Gathering. Between last night's programming, getting to spend time with Tony Trischka, to just turning 180 degrees, going back 300 and 400 years in history, to looking at the earliest documentation of the banjo and actually getting to see John Rose's South Carolina watercolor with all of the iconic material associated with it. Where do we go from here? That's what we're going to be doing this afternoon, is helping to bridge those gaps between just our recent history and our distant past. And as part of this afternoon's programming, looking at the return of ragtime with our good friend Aaron Jonah Lewis. We're so excited to have. Would you make him feel welcome before I introduce him? So, for those of you that don't know this, Aaron is based in Detroit and is one of the few performing musicians with the facility to build compelling musical bridges between printed banjo music and techniques of the 19th century and the instrument's journey into recorded sound by the turn of the 20th century. Aaron, as all of you know, is passionate about sharing early fingerstyle banjo music and its historical context as a delightful style that brings joy and connects us to the depth of our shared American history. So as we welcome Aaron to the stage, I would also like to mention a little bit of housekeeping. We're going to hold off all questions to the end of his presentation because as we looked at what he put together for us today, we don't want any interruptions. So ladies and gentlemen, would you please welcome Aaron Jonah Lewis.
I'm glad that Greg was the one to read that bio because he wrote that first sentence anyway about the facility and compelling bridges and stuff. I'm like, really? I am? Okay, cool. So yeah, I used to be a performer like 100% of the time. And then because of COVID, I had to change gears a little bit. And I started just throwing myself into the most complicated and ambitious recording project of my entire life. So I'm going to tell you about that project today. I'm not doing as much performing as I would like, but this project is super fun and interesting and complicated and exciting. And it involves a lot of moving parts. So let me just jump right in and read some of the notes that I might have written for myself. So what is this project? I'm calling it the Ragtime Banjo Revival because people used to play a lot of ragtime music on the banjo. Even I think before it was really played a lot on the piano. And of course we could talk about the roots of ragtime. I think we'll get to that a little bit later on in the presentation. But this project is an ambitious recording project, including original arrangements that I have written, of ragtime pieces by several composers from the ragtime era, late 19th to early 20th century, some written for banjo and some I adapted for banjo from piano music. For example, Scott Joplin pieces or James Scott pieces. And I'm employing up to 28 or more local musicians. So that is a lot of scheduling. Here's a quick overview of what's going to be going on in this presentation. I'm going to talk about the selections, my background, the background of ragtime, the ensembles I'm using, the process of getting like where we're at now, what I've done to get to where I am and what there is left to do. This is kind of a nuts and bolts presentation rather than a lot of theory or deep dives into history per se. It's more about living history, because here we are now and we don't want history to be relegated strictly to museums and archives, but to actually bring it to life in front of people. So that's where I'm at as a performer. As I mentioned when I introduced myself, I'm a performer primarily, and I'm not like primarily a scholar or a historian or a collector. So I see my role as a performer being very relevant to all of this. And I'm surprised there aren't more performers here, although I know there are some. So that's kind of what we're here. And then, then I talk about some of the real nitty gritty stuff. I'm probably just going to skip over that because it's super boring, but it's also really expensive. And then we'll get to the relevance and how you can help. So there are going to be a few examples of what I'm working on is mainly what I'm going to share here. So, oops, oh, here we go. Okay, so these are the pieces that I've chosen to include. Are they all in there? I thought I'd say something about how I selected the pieces, right? I didn't go by alphabetical order or by some experts' recommendations. I kind of chose most of the pieces the same way that I chose to play the banjo. It's through people that I've met, through human person-to-person contact. So that's how I found out about most of these pieces. Of course, some of them like Maple Leaf Rag are just simply in the air, like everybody knows them. But rag pickings, for example, is it is the first piece that I learned when I decided I'm going to play classic banjo. Greg actually gave me a pile of sheet music duplicates he didn't need, and that I thought that one looked doable, even though it is still really hard to play. I was like, I could have chosen something easier to start with. And then some of these pieces, like Restless Rag, I chose because I had a hard time finding a lot of examples of ragtime music written specifically for the banjo. A lot of stuff was written for piano or for band and was adapted for banjo later. But of the handful of things I could find that were specifically written for banjo, Restless Rag is one of those. What else? There's at least a couple. The Turkey Gobbler Rag, very strange piece. It's very strange. It's by Fred Bacon. That one was written specifically for banjo. I'm also throwing in a few pieces that are not ragtime at all. They're either from the ragtime era, such as Rachmaninoff's Prelude, which went on to inspire the composition of Russian Rag by George L. Cobb, which I'm also going to record. Or the Bolero by Moskowski, which Fred Van Epps recorded, and it was written around the same time. Moskowski's got an interesting story. And it's not ragtime at all, but it's very cool. And I arranged it for string quartet, and we're going to record it because I figured if you're going to put out a ragtime album, you got to include some stuff that's not ragtime so that people can say, aha, I gotcha. That one's not ragtime. But, you know, it makes the ragtime pieces sound more ragtime because, you know, you have to have that contrast. The couple of exceptions to the ragtime era rule, because you always have to have exceptions. Carnival by Terrence Bailey Jr. on the top right. That's a ragtime piece, but it was written in 1948. And if you don't know, Terrence Bailey Jr. was, you know, the prodigy, greatest banjo player of his era. Many would say he was a British banjo player. He was the first banjo player to appear on television. There are a couple videos of him on YouTube. I'd recommend checking it out because it's jaw-dropping. The stuff he was doing. And the other big exception is Les Papillons by François Couperin, which is from, you know, the interpreter at the museum could tell you probably better than me, but 17th century, I think, or 18th. Kind of a contemporary of Bach, anyways. That's just a coincidence kind of thing where like one of my students said, check out, I want to learn this piece. And I was like, oh, cool, Baroque. Yeah, let's do that. And then I started working with this organ player who of course knows all of the Couperin repertoire. So it sounded really cool together. I'm going to get to some examples of some of my rehearsal recordings in a little bit, but let's move on. This next slide shows you the ensembles that I've been arranging for, and you've got string quartet, ragtime band, which consists of banjo, piano, cello, uke, and guitar. And I'm planning on getting percussion on 2 of these pieces, not all of them. But Thanks for the Lobster, for example, is not a ragtime piece either. It is a 2-step from the time period by Clarence Jones. And it's more like a marchy feel. It doesn't really have the syncopation, but it's like harmonically, it's just totally confounding. It's like these people were just doing anything they wanted. And I also want to share that, bring that to light. You know, people think of ragtime or this time period is like very dry or it's, oh, Scott Joplin's so dignified and elegant, which of course I love. But there was also just a lot of wild experimentation and, you know, like Eli Kaufman told me not to play that piece. I was trying to find if there was a piano accompaniment written for it. And of course, it wasn't ever written down for banjo in the first place. And he said, that's a throwaway tune. You know, that was just a pop tune of the moment and it's of no interest to us now. And I said, that's exactly why it's of interest to us now. So, and Chicken Chowder by Irene Giblin, she's the only female composer represented, which I think is a shame because, you know, there must have been a lot more female composers writing ragtime than got published, which, you know, this kind of inequity continues to this day, of course, but at least we have her Chicken Chowder. It's this lovely, like very fun, kind of clashy, fun, like chromatic runs kind of piece. Anyway, the woodwind quintet, that is not a traditional woodwind quintet, which that would normally consist of flute, oboe, clarinet, bassoon, and French horn, but instead of French horn, I'm using bass saxophone because bass saxophone it's like way better than French horn. I'm sorry. I originally wrote for French horn and I showed it to a friend of mine who's like a woodwind person. And he was like, that would sound so much better with bass saxophone. I was like, who plays bass saxophone? He's like, I do. So we're good with bass sax. Gonna do a couple numbers with just banjo and guitar. A surf rock interpretation of Temptation Rag. I could go into more detail on that, but maybe a little bit later. I've got a 10-piece brass band. I'll show you a picture of them a little bit later. They're sort of an institution around Detroit. They're actually like a 40-piece brass band, but I kind of got the all-star / willing to do a thing for the fun of it people to join me on this. And we've had a few rehearsals and it's awesome. Hopefully have time to share one of those pieces with you. The pipe organ, I'm going to get to in a second, tell you more about the organ. And then the piano is the same pianist, one of the people I worked with for my last album, which I'm also going to talk about in a second. I'm going to do one piece with piano and foot percussion, which I don't know if everyone's already familiar. You're probably already familiar with foot percussion, kind of percussive dancing. I'm going to have a world famous award-winning foot percussionist join me for a recording of the Smiler, which is, you know, one of the ABF group tunes, so it's kind of a well-known piece. And then I'm also going to go for a xylophone and banjo recording of the Ragtime Oriole, which has become like one of those pieces that I record every time I make a recording. there's a few of those. So those are the ensembles. Oh, wait, did it go? Yes, background. Now, what's the background of ragtime and of the classic, the fingerstyle banjo? So, I mean, I think most of you are on the same page with this already, but you know, classic banjo was really popular. You know, if there's only one thing I try to tell people who don't already know about classic banjo, it's that for a good long time, like a number of decades, it was the most popular kind of music just all around. Everyone was into it. I'm not saying there weren't other kinds of music that were popular, but it was very likely that if you went to someone's house to have some fun, people would be playing banjos. And now today it's almost totally forgotten. There's, I think, literally hundreds of people in the whole world who know or care or play any classic banjo music. So I think that's fascinating. Like, what does that mean for our culture, right? That we could just so quickly, like in the span of 100 years, like be obsessed with something and then completely like erase its memory. It just never even happened. Nobody needs to know about it. It's over. It's not cool. So that's a big part of my interest in all of this work is like that kind of historical perspective. Like, where are we? What kind of society are we that, like, does this mean that everything we're doing now is going to be forgotten in 100 years? Like, why then, you know, where's the continuity? Where's the generational continuity? Where's the caring about our future generations and our past generations? So I'm trying to stimulate some of that when I present this material to audiences. Let's see. Yeah, so this music, the ragtime music has its roots in African-American music that was appropriated for minstrel shows and mingled with other popular styles of European and distinctly American origin. And that gave rise to ragtime, which later led to the development of jazz and so on. I think I kind of already made clear like my intentions here to share this with a wider audience. sharing the historical context. So yeah, and like I said last night, I'm not into this purely for the musical interest, because it is interesting musically, like there is a lot of really wacky and interesting stuff, but my interest in the banjo has kindled an interest in history that I never expected, because I never before in my life was that interested in anything historical. I just didn't care that much, which a lot of people, it's fine. But suddenly, like, just these worlds have opened up to me, and it's partly through contact with people like I've met, like for example, Charlie and Carol Ann, or Greg Adams here, or everyone here that I've years inspires me to learn more and to share more. I am the great and powerful. I see what happened.
We'll get it. You're good.
So I'm just gonna keep going.
Keep going.
Now we have a nice graphic of the cover art from my last album, The Mozart of the Banjo, the Joe Morley project. And I got this lovely Weaver banjo, which Morley played Weaver banjos among others. After I finished that project, I recorded it on the Bacon and Day Senorita from the mid '50s, manufactured by Gretsch. But that somebody said to me, "Oh, you're the ragtime guy," and I was like, "Whoa, no, I'm not an expert in ragtime. I'm like a music guy. I'm a performer." But if you talked to me a couple years ago, you would have been like, "Oh, you're the Joe Morley guy." So I'm kind of like going through different, just focusing on different things, different aspects. And Morley, of course, was the most prolific and one of the most well-known and beloved composers of classic banjo music that we have. So that album was focusing on a single composer, using mostly that composer's arrangements. I did make my own arrangement for one of his pieces. For this project, I'm broadening the sound and representing several different ragtime composers. And yes, it will be my most ambitious project, working with more musicians than I ever have before. Oops, let's show you that. Yeah, look at that artwork. I love that. So yeah, Grace made that. So yeah, I really like that. I wanted to share that with you. I do have some copies available here with me, limited number. And yeah, let's move on. I already talked about the ensembles. I'm kind of getting ahead of myself because I'm excited. So yeah, rehearsing, like, man, I'm going to talk about the whole money aspect of this a little later, but getting people to rehearse and not paying them to rehearse is easy and fun sometimes when it's like your friends and you're just doing a fun thing. But like, I'm not friends with that many, like I don't have any bassoon player friends. So I've had to like really reach out and like trust on the goodwill of people. So far, I actually have, and I know this is going to be, this is going to be a later slide anyway, but I have a string quartet and I have a woodwind quintet. I have the 10-piece brass band. I've got the piano and the guitar and the cello. I've got them all lined up, and I've managed to have rehearsals with, oh no, this is this slide. Okay, so yeah, I've had a few rehearsals with the Ragtime Band. Why don't we play the Maple Leaf Rag? I'll just share a couple of examples of from our rehearsals with the small Ragtime Band. Yeah, just so you get a sense of the sound. It's just recorded on my iPhone. It's not like, we don't, yeah, just have a little taste. I didn't realize it was already 2:23. Can we just skip this and play a little bit of the Russian rag? I think I skipped that one. 1, 2. 1 and 2 and. Cool. Yeah, we can stop it there. I just wanted to share a little bit of that. Yes, now I want to tell you about, okay, let's go back to the presentation. I'm going to tell you about the Senate Theater in Detroit. This is where we're planning to do some of the recording, at least. It was originally opened in 1925, closed in 1955, reopened in 1964, and it's home of the Detroit Theater Organ Society since 1988, with over 700 concerts performed there. And these days they do a lot of film showings of silent films with live organ accompaniment. I volunteer there, been working there for a couple of years. It's a really cool place. If you're ever in town, check out a show there. This is the organ. It is a 4-manual, 34-rank Wurlitzer. It's the 8th largest Wurlitzer ever constructed. It's the largest pipe organ in Michigan, and it contains stops not usually found on theater organs. This is the theater. We're going to record some stuff. Can you play El Contrabandista for me, please? So this is a rehearsal with the organ player. We didn't actually record this. Theater. Get a sense of it. This is actually the piece that sparked this whole idea. I was like, this is great with piano, that's what's written, but I thought, this really needs organ, you know? Like a Phantom of the Opera kind of thing. It's just really nice, I love it. Yeah, that's good, thank you. So we're going to talk about, not really going to talk about all this. This is boring. Some of you already know the situation. When you want to record an album, there's so many things involved. Everything's expensive. Everything takes too long. And the main point is that I have good people working with me. Some of them have worked with me on my last album. Other ones have just done like world-class work with people, you know, that kind of out of my usual price range. Usually I just save up my money and I pay for it. But with this situation, there's a lot more people involved and I want to pay them all, you know, properly. So I'm going to get to this plea for help in a second, but here we go. Manufacturing district, yeah, again, going to skip this stuff. This is kind of sad. Oh, well, actually, this is the ways people interact with music. Yeah, so this is worth pointing out that how the album or the recordings are going to be distributed and shared with the world, it's not clear yet. Because what I used to do is make 1,000 CDs, and it took however long, a year to 3 or 4 years to sell them all, and then maybe print them again or make a new CD. These days, people don't buy CDs as much. Then there's all this excitement about vinyl, but I think it's also like really expensive to make vinyl, and I don't know if people are actually going to buy it. And then a lot of stuff is online. So I don't know how to disseminate it yet, but I know I got to make these recordings. This is another thing that's very important. And I'm just, you know, I just put photos in to spice things up a little bit. It's just like, these are all people that have inspired me in some way. Either I'm playing their music or they help me find the music that I'm playing. Publicity also need help with that. More people that I think are cool. This is the band, the Detroit Party Marching Band, they're called. They don't do anything for money. They just show up and crash other people's events. That's their whole thing. Sometimes it's in support and sometimes it's in protest. But when they show up, you know, it's like whatever you're doing, you have to stop for at least 20 minutes. Just wait for them to be done. Go forward. Okay, the relevance of this project. My primary interest is finding ways to make a near-dead form of music compelling and engaging in an environment where it seems like many people regard any activity involving history or looking to the past as out of touch or moving backward. Also, I mean, I should mention I live in Detroit. Detroit is a very forward-looking city because the past has been very traumatic for most people there. So it's very cool that it's very forward looking, but it's also like very difficult to interest anyone in anything involving the past. And I know, like, I have a lot of different types of privilege to be able to sit there and enjoy the past, because a lot of people don't have that privilege, but I'm looking for ways to connect people to be able to, you know, enjoy or explore the past in different ways. This music, for me, it provides a missing link in our shared cultural history. It opens doors to discussion and understanding of how we got to where we are now. I think this can bring people closer to understanding the systemic racism and patriarchal colonialism that got us to where we are now. Many approaches are needed so we can start to move forward together. And while a direct or confrontational approach is certainly valid, I like to approach the issues in a gentle and entertaining way. Another thing I like to point out about ragtime specifically is that when we talk about recorded music versus printed music, ragtime is just right on that edge. It was kind of the height of culture, like popular culture, where people were buying sheet music and playing it at home and sharing music together before they were outsourcing music production to professional musicians and bands or radios or phonographs. So again, I'm not trying to say that development in our history is a bad thing, but it's worth looking at and saying, well, hey, like before that, you know, before that switch 100 years ago, that's the only way people ever experienced music for all of human existence, was by being present with an instrument or a person singing or them singing. You know, that's the only way music ever happened. And then there was this change. And so I think it's worth pointing that out and examining it a little bit. Now I'm going to share a Muse score, one of the arrangements I made. I could spend a whole lot longer like talking about how I made the arrangements. Partly it's just like, I hear woodwind quintet. I think that would sound so cool with this. And also, like, I'm not an expert. I'm not a composer like professionally or an arranger. So this was a lot of learning for me. And I did mostly keep it pretty safe. Like, I didn't take a lot of chances. I didn't like do some wild interpretation. It's kind of the same way I play the banjo music. I just mostly play what's written, and then occasionally I'll do like little things that I think would be neat that I can do my own way. So I'm a pretty kind of playing it safe kind of player. Same way with the arrangements. So I'm going to play a whole piece for you now. This is Grace and Beauty by James Scott. Take it away. you. So, sorry? Yes, please. Yeah. I was going to show you some of the other albums I've produced, but there's dozens of them. So it's just the point of that is just to show you that I've been doing this for a while. I've made a lot of records. I know how to do that. But we're going to skip to this part now, how you can help. My greatest fear for this project is that I will spend so much time fundraising or crowdfunding that I end up raising enough to make it happen, but when it's time to record, I will not play very well because I should have spent more time practicing. To avoid that, my goal is to solicit private donations to cover production costs, and then once the album is recorded, then I can spend time on chasing down foundations and doing crowdfunding to cover all the costs of mixing and mastering and manufacturing and marketing and publicity and all that. So that is my goal. And that's not the only reason I wanted to tell you all about this project, but seriously, if you know anybody who likes to help fund music projects, or if you do yourself, I'm going to tell you more about how you can help or get in touch. This is the breakdown of the budget. It's around 45 grand. And that's not even including all the costs, I realized, but you see about half of it is going straight to musicians. Then about a quarter of it is for PR marketing kind of stuff. And then video is very important too, to get some high quality video production. I have a professional a video producer on board who's a friend of mine. And everybody's working for friend rates, but it's still gonna cost that much. So that is the breakdown of the budget, and then this is the last slide before we go to questions. But I do have a fiscal sponsor with a nonprofit which I work with called the Great Lakes Performing Artists Agency. And if you want to support or you want to help people support, you can take a picture of this slide. And oops, I see I covered up the shoot. I just wanted that heart emoji to really be visible. Anyway, there's the instructions. You text perform to 91999, blah, blah, blah. The same with, you can follow that link. I think Lillian maybe printed out a QR code if you like to do things that way.
I will have it later.
Okay. Anyway, and also, that's my contact info. Anyone here is welcome to take down my number, my email address, contact me with any questions. I'd be so happy to keep talking about this, but I have a feeling like we should take any questions that people may have.
Definitely have some questions.
Great.
Before we do questions, give them a round of applause.
I'm just there, I fixed it. Can you reload the slide and it'll maybe show the zip code there if anyone wants to mail a check to GLPAA? Yeah, that's amazing. It worked like that. Okay, cool. Yeah, who's got questions?
I was just wondering, in this style of music that you play and back then, what were the main tunings of the banjo that were used?
I don't know for sure, but I think from what I've seen written, it's the standard tuning, the classic style bit standard tuning, pre-bluegrass standard tuning. So from fifth string down, it would be G, C, G, B, D. Although there are plenty of pieces, a minority, but plenty of them are written in open G, like bluegrass standard tuning. So G, D, G, B, D.
Okay. And with the other ragtime tunes, I guess if they're playing in a different key, you would just make it relative to the banjo, I guess. Like if they're playing in E flat, you would just put the drone in E flat, I guess.
Yeah, no, that's a really interesting technical question that I've had to address. Sometimes people will just change the key. And I think Grace and Beauty was originally written in A flat, and it just didn't work so good. But there are other pieces, like I play Frog Legs Rag by James Scott in the key he wrote it in D flat. And while some might look at my arrangement and say, why? I mean, I think it's fun and it sounds cool, and it actually makes sense because the lowest note of the melody is a C, which is the lowest note on the banjo. So it works out pretty well. I also just wanted to push myself, see if I could play Maple Leaf Rag in A flat, which is you know, regardless whether it's the original key or not, it's just the key that it's written in for the piano. And I thought, well, let's see if we can do that. And so I arranged it that way. And it's kind of technically unnecessarily difficult. But you do get some really cool stuff that happens. So, you know, in this style of playing, the drone isn't really used as a drone as much as it would if, you know, in like clawhammer or bluegrass playing. You still use it sometimes, like you can use it as a passing note to like get up a scale or down a scale. And sometimes it's like a pedal point kind of thing. It does get used in a lot of different ways, but yeah, to be honest, like when I'm playing Maple Leaf Rag in A flat or Froglegs Rag in D flat, I do use that open fifth string, but just not that much. I mean, I use it when it's handy, but it's not like a feature of the playing.
Thanks so much.
Why not Nola?
Why not? Because everyone's played it already. And it's a wonderful piece, but like, I mean, I guess you could also say, well, everyone's played Maple Leaf Rag already, but they haven't played it in A flat. So I'm trying to do stuff that people haven't done already, to some degree, I guess. You know, I said to Christian this morning, you know what people love to hear the most is stuff they've already heard. So I do want to include some familiar stuff, but like, but yeah, I don't know. Another thing about Nola for me, just personally, is that like a lot of the cool tunes that I found through my friend Ben Belcher, who I've been playing with for 20 years, and we still play together in the Corn Potato String Band. And you know, he'll say, "Well, check out this cool tune." And I'm like, "Oh my God, that's really cool!" Like, I'm gonna learn that. And then like later on, he like has still only like learned the first strain, and I'm like playing the whole thing in a different key. And he's like, "Man, you're always like taking tunes from me." And I'm like, so like Nola was like the gateway tune for both of us into like older kinds of music, like older like non fiddle tune, like, you know, novelty songs kind of stuff. And he learned to play. He was inspired by Bill Keith's recording, and I just backed him up on it for years and years. I still do, but I was like, I'm not going to take Nola from him.
Any other questions?
I just want to say that,
Lots of the folks online said, great job, Aaron. They were really impressed by your arrangements. And Stan asked a little bit more about the video recordings, whether those will just for you to talk a little bit more about video recording some of your ensembles.
Yeah, well, so it's kind of similar to the recording overall. Like the plan is to like get a bunch of money and then spend it on this project. But if I don't get all the money that I need, then I'll probably still do like a smaller version of the project, maybe just make one video. But really, we have plans to make 4 or 5 videos, and they're not going to just be like studio recording, like, oh, the band's playing and I'm recording. It's going to be like a video, like a thing. And we want to do at least 1 or 2 in the Senate Theater because of this beautiful thing. Yeah, I mean, that's just the thing, is like trying to raise money. That's just never been my thing, like my area of something I've ever been good at. I just, you know, I play gigs, and you know, that's how I make a living. So yeah.
Thank you for that. Can you tell us more about the banjo that you were just playing?
Yeah, this is my Weaver that was made in I forget. I'm sorry, guys. I'm not like I don't remember all the details about the instruments, but this is a Weaver banjo made in England, and that's the pot. Really, the neck was custom made for John Cohen by John Cohen the Younger by Clifford Essex, and then I had to get it reshaped because I just had really different preferences. But it is the same neck. Yeah, I don't know. Yeah, Joe Morley played a Weaver. Weavers are really nice. I don't know what else to say.
Well, it has a nice, wonderful round tone. You have such a strong presence with it, and we're grateful that you're sharing your work with us, and we're glad to continue talking about it.
Yeah, thanks. If I don't, I was thinking maybe I should change the strings before I got here, but I didn't, so it still sounds good.
All right.
So yeah, just the thing again, just final plea about raising the money. Like, it doesn't have to be any one person here, but like I am, if you think of anyone that you know who's like, oh, I love to make music projects happen, you know, let me know, or give them in touch with me. And I'm not like, I mean, a few years ago, my attitude would have been really, really desperate and kind of stressed out about this kind of thing. And I probably wouldn't have even started it. But my attitude now is I'll just do what I can. And if I don't raise the money, it's just not going to happen. And that's okay. But like, I've come this far, so that's pretty cool. I have written all these arrangements. I'd love to share them all with you. Is there time for one more?
Yes.
No, there's not.
No. Like 2 minutes. They're short ones. No, okay.
We can do a quick one.
Okay, let's do Carnival. Make sure the monitor is on. So this is one of the arrangements for the band, for the 10-piece brass band, and it's not a super traditional thing. This is the rag that was written in 1948 by Terrence Bailey Jr. To my ear, it has some you know, just coming out of World War II, there's like some angst and fear combined with hope for the future. And yeah, so you'll hear a bit of the party as well, like from the Detroit Party Marching Band. You'll hear some of that written into the arrangement. Yeah. Oh shoot. Cool. Thank you all.
Well, we'll be back shortly with our next presentation with Tony Thomas.